Okay, all right. Recording has started. Yeah. There's a lot of questions I want to ask as we're sitting here, but I'm going to hold them back, like Lucy said.
Yeah.
Wow. Should I be worried?
It's just like, like when product people get together, we've got like our challenges, and then there's the growth talk, and then there's, I wish I could do X, Y, Z, or this is where I'm struggling with, those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
I think also, and this is what we found with the meetup, what's different to sort of watching a recorded lecture or something is there's a real, people never get to peek behind the curtains of another company at how a team works. There's a lot about like how the big American companies work. People want to know how teams closer to home are doing it, and how what their flavor of the best practice is. And yeah, I think that's what makes it really great. That's what everyone's curious about.
Interesting.
I do think the community in Nigeria is quite strong from what I've seen. Hey, Khadijah? Or is it just
no. I think there's and this is just my perspective compared to like when I started out as a PM, there's definitely a lot more support in Nigeria. And I say this only because I'm not as familiar with any other markets. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But we do have like tons of training, workshops, organizations, communities, thought leaders, and people like that. So just for me, just looking outwards, I'm like, oh, wow, if all of this existed when I started, maybe I would have been the CEO of, I don't know, a strong company now. I kid.
In progress.
Yeah. What's it like in SA?
So I think it's very similar. Like I think 10 years ago, right? It was a struggle to find product people. Like when we started this community, for example, in 2013, we had a handful of product managers, but the community has grown quite a bit. And there's a lot more companies hiring product people, but there's also a lot of product people struggling, I think. And sometimes it's also a little bit of what do product people actually supposed to do, and organizations itself kind of figuring that out along the way. So the struggles, there's still quite a bit of struggles in that. However, I'm just quite excited that a lot of people are hiring product managers now. A lot of companies are hiring them. So it's a lot more mature in that way. Anita, you were saying something?
It's very contextual, because I think we're not quite yet at the level of maturity of a lot of the overseas markets, where it's super well defined what the function does and what the general ambit is. There's still a continuum here where product management is seen anything from project management, across product ownership to full commercially driven product management. So yeah, very contextual, based on the company and sort of the maturity of the company's outlook.
Exactly. I think it's the same everywhere, to be honest, because even in the supposedly developed societies, most companies have their interpretation of what product management should be, right? And sometimes there are nuances where you're like, wait, this isn't product management, but it's like, yeah, this is how we do it here. It's very interesting to see.
Yeah. All right, so we are about 5 minutes in. Shall we get going? Cool. Hi, everyone. I think we should get going. Anita,
good afternoon.
We'll see. I should give it a few more minutes. How many people have joined?
Yeah, I think we can start with intros and start going.
Okay, cool. All right, so welcome to everyone who's joined Cape Town Product Meetup. This is our first event of the year, and we're excited to have all of you here. Before we dig into the main event, I just want to touch on some introductions, a little bit about Cape Town Product Meetup, and then just some housekeeping things. Then we're excited to have Khadijah, who's our main speaker for the evening. Welcome, Khadijah. Excited to have you here. And then, cool. We have Q&A. We have an opportunity for you to ask questions, and we plan to close around 7-ish. And if you want to hang around a bit afterwards and have a chat, feel free to do so. Okay. A little bit about Cape Town Product Meetup. We started this community in 2013, and we are about over 1,000 members. And we run an event every quarter. That's what we aim to do. And this is the first event for this year. We are always looking for speakers. So if you have product people who are keen to speak in your organization, or if you are keen to speak, please give us a shout, get in touch with one of the organizers. And we're also always looking for sponsors. And if you're keen or your company is keen to sponsor, please do get in touch with us. The organizers, so my name is Anu Augustine. I'm one of the organizers. There's Wusi Dlamini and Anita Pike. They're also on the Zoom call with us. So please feel free to drop a message to us if, like I said, if you're keen to speak, or if you have anything that you want to discuss with us in relation to product, you can reach out to us. And then just some housekeeping things. While we're having the conversation, please can you make sure you're on mute? We will open up for Q&A, and you can use the chat to type in the questions, and we'll pick up the questions from there. Note that the session is being recorded, and once the session's over, you can give us a week, and we will post the recorded session on our YouTube channel. And we always appreciate any social media tweets. Please tweet on Twitter and use the hashtag #CTProduct. Always keen to hear your comments, any thoughts on what we're covering today. Right. And then a special thanks to our sponsor. OfferZen has kindly sponsored their swag, and you can get their swag as long as you fill in, you go to their form. So one of the organizers will share the link. Anita Owusi will share the link on chat. All you need to do is give your address details, and they'll send you their wonderful swag. I think most people in Cape Town or in South Africa know about their swag. It's very cool. So all you need to do is fill in the form, and you will have the swag at your doorstep. So special thanks to OfferZen. Also, if your organization is hiring product managers, please, you can feel free to share the link or the details on the chat, because I can imagine there'll be a lot of product managers attending. So, and if you're attending the event and keen to apply, or please do spread the word. So all those, I think there will be some links that are shared. So if you are looking for an opportunity, or someone, do share. Okay. Then moving on to the main event. So Khadijah Boo from Paystack, we'll be talking to her. She is heading up product expansion at Paystack. So Paystack is a startup that enables businesses across Africa to accept payments from their customers. And she drives the effort to get more of Paystack's core products into more markets in the continent. So in 2015, Paystack was the first Nigerian startup to participate in Y Combinator. And in October 2020, Stripe acquired Paystack in what is one of the biggest startup acquisitions to date that comes out of Nigeria. She has a 15-year career focused in fintech in the payment space, working across operations, strategy, expansion, and product management, and has managed a variety of products and has led design and implementation of several business automation projects. She's also one of the organizers of Product Tank Lagos, a nonprofit community for product managers, and volunteers across a variety of advocacy and learning institutions. So Khadijah, welcome to the meetup, and we're excited to have you here.
Thank you, Annie. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here as well.
Cool. So I am starting off with the questions. Maybe just give us a brief introduction about your experience in product. And I always like to think about, we all have a personality when we're in product management, and maybe give us a hint about what your personality is in product.
It's an interesting one. I guess, like you said, my name is Khadijah, and I lead the product expansion team at Paystack. I've been with the company for about 4.5 years now, just doing multiple things as usual. And before that, I spent about a decade in another fintech company, again, just building out payment infrastructure on the continent. My product journey is very interesting. As with most people, I don't think anybody here would have gone to major in product management while at school. So my background was in electrical engineering, and then my first role was actually in customer support. And between then and when I started working as a PM, I did lots of random things. I've done developer support, operations management, technical sales. I was in a strategy team for a while. I was just pretty random, until I found product management, which just appeared to be this thing that allowed me do all these random things, but was still recognized as one thing. And I've just held on to it for dear life ever since. So that's kind of like my product story. I was never one of those people that just knew what they wanted to do. Those kids that see a plane flying over their homes when they are 6 years old and they're like, oh, I'm going to be a pilot. And then they grow up and they become pilots. Yeah, I envy people like that. I've never had that. So thankfully, I think product is one thing that just allows me be my authentic self, but not being seen as just super random, I guess. And the product personality question is interesting. I've never really thought about it. What would you say your product personality is?
Sure, that's a very good question. Throwing it back right at me. So I get pretty excited and annoyed when I hear about customer pain if I'm working with a product and some customer experience something really painful. So I feel like I'm quite vocal, and I can be annoyed about customer pain points. So people would probably say, I don't know, I always think about it as what do people say, and they'd be like, oh, Anu cares about the customer experience, so what would she say? Would she be annoyed about this? So I don't know, I'm thinking about it something along those lines. So I don't know. I don't think I've answered the question. Thanks for throwing it back at me.
Oh my God. Okay, it's fine. We can let it go. I would say
come on.
Yeah, maybe it was, I think that was a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I'm a big picture thinker. So it's very hard for me to do anything if I can't connect it to the expected outcome. So I'm one of those people that once I get it, then I will break it down to first principles and then figure out the right solution for each of the nuances. So if I guess that's the best way I would think about my product personality in that context.
Ah, cool. That's cool. Okay, cool. Can you give us a brief introduction about Paystack and what Paystack does?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think Paystack is essentially a payments company. It was founded as an online payments company in 2015 by two software engineers, Shala and Ezra, out of Nigeria. And the core mission was just really, how do we help African businesses accelerate their growth by exposing them to more people that want to buy what they're selling. In the last 6 years, I would say that we've built robust technology to onboard merchants of any size, help them accept payments securely and reliably via the methods that their customers want to pay. One thing we say is your customers will be able to pay you however they want to pay. If somebody wants to use their card or EFT or SnapScan, or we're not there yet. If somebody wants to scan their retina on their laptop to authenticate payments, yeah, we're in there, so just let us worry about the payments while you can continue to think about your business. Like you mentioned during the intro, Paystack was acquired by Stripe in October of 2020. Stripe is a US company valued at over $100 billion, sorry. And I think the acquisition just reflects Paystack and Stripe's strong cultural mission alignment, in just accelerating the GDP of the internet to grow economies all across the world. So right now, Paystack is live in 3 countries. We're in Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa. We launched in South Africa in May of last year, and just looking to scale that very quickly. We're undergoing a private beta in Kenya, and I'm excited because this year will be my first foray into non-English speaking Africa. So I'm really excited about exploring that market as well. What else? I guess we have over 60,000 businesses. We support like almost $1 billion every month, and we support multiple payment channels. We're PCI certified, like all the good stuff, basically, just focused on security, compliance, and making sure that businesses can literally just focus on their businesses, right? Anytime a business owner has to think about the payment side, then to us, it's kind of like a failure on our part. So just doing everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen, then collectively grow the business and the economy of Africa.
Wow, okay. So you touched on a bit about your expansion into Africa, right? So, and South Africa and Ghana, right? What has been your experiences? So I've always heard, right, working with, although Africa is like one continent, sometimes people see it as one country as well, but the challenges in every country is different. And what has, from a product perspective, your key learnings been?
Yeah, I think the first big thing that struck me was just how fragmented everything is. To your point, like the USA has like commonalities across almost all the countries on the continent, right? In North America, if you will. Same thing with the EU. But with Africa, you can literally drive 5 kilometers and you're in a whole new regime with new compliance requirements, new regulations, new tax laws, and this. The first thing is just like, oh my God, like you literally have to understudy each market in the context of their local nuances and everything else you need to adhere to and be mindful of. Cultural inflections are also very important here. Like there's some things that are not written or said, but they are deep-seated beliefs that if you don't have a sense of what they are, you're literally building for yourself, So that was another thing that I think really hits me. I remember there was this time, the founder, I think he flew to Egypt for something. And then we're talking about expanding into North Africa. And I remember him calling me to say, oh my God, this is never going to work. And I was like, what happened? He said he got down from the plane, he got out of the airport, he had requested an Uber on his phone, and he got out and there were a row of taxis and the plate numbers were in Arabic. And he was like, yeah, this isn't going to work, So just think about how you have all these hopes and dreams and plans, but the reality, it's never a plug and play system. Like I've never seen that in all the markets we've explored. You always have to pause, take the time to understand what can work, and then see if you already have a solution. And if you don't, give yourself space to build the right solution, because otherwise you're going to invest a lot of time and effort into doing the wrong thing. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, so given that context, right, how have you been building out your product team with the expansion? I'm keen to hear about what that growth looks like and what the product, where the product teams are. Are they in country, etc. So maybe in general, talking about the growth of the product team, I guess.
Yeah. So I think I can speak to specifically my team, that's product expansion. I mean, of course, the idea is to have a subject matter expert in each country or each region that we're exploring, and then ultimately scale that to the regional focus PMs versus in-country PMs. Like if we were in South Africa and we wanted to go live in Botswana, for example, maybe we don't necessarily need to hire another PM for Botswana. Maybe we can leverage the expertise of the SAPM to just scale through the entirety of the region. So I would say like the first thing is we're looking for somebody with, it's a PM role, but there's also added nuance there because you have to be a very strong business person. You have to understand macroeconomics on a level that a regular PM might not. You don't even have to be as technical because there's a lot of the core platform in Paystack that you can leverage. So people have built out multiple things in other markets. You're only looking for how to customize that to the market you're serving and then bring in insights from the people you've spoken to, the customers you've engaged, the people that are building in those markets to then influence what else gets built, whether it's an entirely new feature or service, or it's just something that requires a tweak from our existing product base. So we do have like one PM focused on each market right now. And again, it's an experiment. So who knows, if this doesn't work in another year or so, we'll switch it around again. But right now, that's kind of like where we are. And I will say so far, so good. They have very deep expertise on ground, firsthand information on what people want, firsthand engagements with all the potential customers and partners we want to work with, and just keeping an eye on like trends in terms of new regulation, new mandates, how the economy is evolving, and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of like where we are right now. I don't know where we'll be same time next year.
Okay, all right. And then, so you did mention in the beginning, right, with the personality answer that you gave, right? You like the big picture, and I think that kind of ties nicely with the strategy. So how do you define product strategy at Paystack?
In terms of how we approach, is it how? Yeah, okay, it's fine. I'll just answer what I think you're asking. I think ultimately, the core question we try to answer when we talk about product strategy is, what are we optimizing for? In terms of the company's vision or mission or goals, it's very clear, like all we're trying to do is accelerate the amount of digital commerce happening on the continent. The idea is, if as a business owner, you can only exchange value with somebody standing right in front of you, then the scale and growth of your business will be dependent on the number of people you have in your immediate vicinity. But imagine sitting in your space and being able to create something that somebody halfway across the world wants to buy. Then all of a sudden you're able to compete on a global scale along with anybody else operating out of any continent. So we're 100%, we're a very mission-driven company. So we're 100% aligned on the mission. And then kind of like each year or each time horizon, we get together to define what are some key levers we want to pull within that current time horizon to get us closer to our core mission, right? And I will say it's kind of like a top-down, bottom-up approach. So this year, for example, we can all decide as a company that, oh, we need to provide better focus on expansion and reliability. And we also have like, there's a concept of zero goals. Like these are some things that we don't want to happen this year. And then that's just like where we want to be as a company 12 months from now. And then each product team sort of takes that, distills it, and then comes up with their own recommendations on how they can help us get one step closer to those goals. And then when they pitch it, there's a lot of iteration and conversations around, okay, how will this work? Have you thought about it? Blah, blah, blah. And then ultimately it becomes like, I guess, the plan for the year for each team. So yeah, I would say it's both top down and bottom up, but just still 100% aligned on the core mission of the company.
Okay. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. I see Anita's popped a question. Anita, do you want to ask the question?
Yeah.
Sure. It relates to when you described your team structure with the in-country PMs. I was curious about how those PMs then work with the development teams when they do need to do sort of local customization on top of the core platform. Do they work with a centralized dev team, a dedicated dev team? How do you approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say that the concept of product at Paystack is highly cross-functional. So yes, there's a PM, but the PM doesn't exist in a vacuum. The PM ideally is paired with their own engineering team. If it's a front-facing product team, then their own UI, UX product design type person. If it's business heavy, then somebody from the legal, regulatory, and compliance team, somebody from the finance or treasury team, somebody from the support team. Like it's highly cross-functional. So the team gets to decide what they want to do and then how they want to do it. If they need expertise from another team, then it becomes a question of like, should we build it ourselves or should we wait for this other team to find room in their roadmap to build it? And then you get to decide what works best for you. If it's, I think from experience, if it's like extremely tedious and complex and you're like, yeah, we're never going to be able to do this the way we think it should be done, then half the time you just wait unless you can find a workaround. But if it's a quick win or something not that serious, then the team is very readily able to take it up and make the required changes to achieve its own goals and objectives. But like I said, there's a lot of shared services that all the teams can leverage anyway. So it's not very often that there's a huge fundamental change that needs to happen that limits the ability of this product team to sort of go about their own goals and objectives. Yeah.
And so would you then have a recipe for your in-country teams, or do you get someone in there, see what the nature is of that country and what skill set you need, and then put a cross-functional team together for that particular country?
Yes, like what you described is what we do, but I'm curious about the first part. Like, do we have a recipe? What did you mean? Just so I'm sure that I'm not.
Yes, so by recipe, I meant maybe sort of standard configuration of the cross-functional team. So you'll always have a PM, you'll always, or do you, yeah, or do you start with a complete blank slate and then have someone start by figuring out what's needed?
Yeah, I think so. Multiple threads happen at the same time. Of course, there's like an entire scoping exercise to determine what is a viable opportunity to pursue. For example, when I'm going to hire a team of engineers and product people and business leads before we even say we want to explore country X, for example. Somebody would have done the work of determining what countries make sense to explore based on multiple factors, you know, and then when we think like, oh, we feel like this is something we want to explore, then we try and get a team that can help us, you know, figure out what to do in that space. But there's what will I call it? Like the work to determine what is viable precludes hiring a team to explore that thing. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, I'm just going to take another question, Khadijah, from the audience. So we've got Jimmy, and Jimmy's asking, has there been a shift in approach in terms of strategy or ways of working with Stripe acquiring Paystack, or does Paystack essentially run itself?
That's another interesting one. I will say that, to be fair, even though Paystack is now 100% owned by Stripe, we're still largely autonomous. Like, to a lot of people, nothing has changed. I think there's increased collaboration on some level. Like some teams work closely with the Stripe team, things like on like reporting and like finance and things like that. But everything else is still largely Paystack. It's almost like having access to a team of people that have resources and have been through what you're going through, if you see what I mean. But it's like, they're not solving your problems for you and you're not solving their problems for them. Your focus is still very strongly on Africa and solving for that continent. And that's really what Paystack is doing. So there's collaboration across multiple teams, and you can always have a conversation when you need to, but Paystack still operates largely as an autonomous entity. Yeah.
Cool. All right, so I, like you said, when you asked the personality question, and I answered it really in a very rough way, I'm quite passionate about customers and users and spending time understanding their pain points and really techniques and tools around that to encourage product managers to bring that knowledge into the building. And I always think that product managers are busy people, and often the easiest thing to stop doing is exactly that. So I would like to learn from you, how do product managers understand customers and users at Paystack? What are some of the techniques that you use, or some of the tools that you found that works?
Yeah, that's another great one. There are multiple, I guess, initiatives we've put in place to try and counter what you've described. Is a very easy space to slip into, where your head is just down, buried in whatever it is you think you're building, but you're not spending as much time with the people you're supposedly building for, right? And I can just run through some of the tactics I've employed really quickly. I think the first one is, when you join the team as a PM, part of your onboarding requires spending a month just working with the support team. So you're not yet a PM, you're essentially a member of the support team. And the idea is to get you familiar with what merchants ask for, the kind of questions they bring to us, the kind of problems they encounter while using our products, and just to give you a good sense of like how to deal with some of those things. For the product team in particular, we're able to segment the sort of support tickets that come into the company based on product. So we tag these requests. So if you're hired as like the PM for, I don't know, onboarding, for example, then during your 1 month stint, you're literally working on onboarding tickets. So by the time you go into your full product role, you're like, oh my God, I already have a backlog. Like, we need to fix all of these things ASAP. So that's just a great way to get people involved in what people are saying. Outside of that, we have weekly, like when we define our goals and objectives for each week, there's always an open question around what merchants you're engaging in the current week. And there's no pressure around like, oh, you must engage like 500,000 merchants every week. But the idea is you should at least have had a one-on-one first-hand conversation with at least one merchant each week, right? And it's all well and good. We have like thousands and thousands of merchants. You can look at data, you can look at what they've said, but just having that first-hand interaction, we found is super helpful for just making sure people don't lose that empathy, you know, that comes from hearing about pain points or just learning how people are using your product or just listening for any opportunities and ideas that can come out of the conversation. On the other side, we're very big on asynchronous communication. So we encourage a lot of people to write. So a lot of teams publish reports on what's happening on their side. So from the sales team to the user support team to the key account management team, they're going to share like reports ever so often. And then the PMs have to, like, it's a resource that's just there waiting for you. It's almost irresponsible of you not to read through it. So the good thing is like those teams also help to synthesize a lot of their learnings. And then they've put it in a nice report. And all you have to do is go in there and say, oh, wow, this person said this. Wow, oh my God, okay, let's have a follow-up call and blah, 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 blah. And then because the entire company is just highly collaborative, when people have conversations, when people are scheduling meetings, when there's a routine call, everything is super visible and you can just opt in to join the conversation or they'll pull you in as well. And then the last thing on this front is for each new initiative, there's a lot of user research involved, and the user research will typically include customer interviews. So you have to have one-on-one conversations with some potential clients, just to understand if your assumptions are correct. You know, as part of your discovery process, you have an idea, and the outcome of the discovery process is to make sure that the problem you want to solve is clearly articulated, and your potential solution, like you have a high certainty that your potential solution will solve the problem. So just conducting enough customer interviews to help you validate your thesis and arrive at the conclusion is also a great way to do that. And one thing to note, okay, this I know the call is being recorded, but it's also a really good way to recruit new customers. Like if you schedule customer interviews with people that don't already use your service and you're just like, oh, we're trying to build this, we have a bunch of questions, and then they're like, this is super exciting, let us know when it's ready. And you're like, okay, we will. So it sort of kills two birds with one stone. But I guess all of this to say, no matter what you do and how much you get yourself buried in the work, you have to come up for air at least once a week, at least when you're kicking off a new initiative, and at least at the end of each month when each team is sharing insights from their own merchant engagements.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So that's all like really nice, little things that you keep people going. Hey. So I think all of us need to like, there needs to be something that forces you sometimes to be doing it. So if there is some like, you know, user research that you have to do, and if you have to do customer interviews, it's great. Because I just find even when I get stuck into a specific product, it's like I need to do and okay, oops, okay, I do need to do customer interviews, but it takes a lot of effort. You've got to schedule them, you know, it's a whole exercise on its own. Okay, cool. So while I was preparing for this talk, right, or this chat, I was just looking for what Paystack was, you know, job ads and things, and I saw that you're looking for associate product managers, which actually got me really interested. I don't know if it's in your team, but I was like then very keen to learn two things. Associate product manager roles is very rare in South Africa. So is that something that's worked for you? And what does that look like? And the second thing is, what is the growth path for a product manager at Paystack?
So, okay, let me take the second question first. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we have 5, I don't know what to call them, tiers, stages, levels at Paystack. So there's an associate PM, and associate PM is just really the role we put you when you want to transition into product management. So if you're a newbie, then you start out as an associate PM. Whether you've worked in a company for a while, okay, this is great because I'm answering both questions in one. Whether you've worked in a company for a while in a different role, or you're literally just joining the company from as a PM, but you haven't worked as a PM anywhere else, then we put you in this transitional role where we're like, okay, you need a lot of support. You need to understand how we think about product here. And the idea is to set you up for success. So you come out on the other side as an accomplished PM. And to your point, we hardly hire associate PMs from outside the company. It's more like I don't know, call this. It's more like a role we created to help people transition easily from other roles within the organization. So from engineering or support or the business team, if you've always wanted to be a PM, then there's a program we can take you through to get you to become a fully functional PM, if you will, right? So that's like the associate PM. And then PM, as you know, is like the PM, well, all PMs, to be fair. And then we have, we just call it a senior PM. I think it's just a function of like how accomplished you are in your PM role. And then we have the product leads. So product leads are people that oversee multiple product portfolios. And senior PMs are like people that own a single portfolio half the time, but they're not necessarily managing people, and they don't necessarily own more than one portfolio, And to be fair, as with most things in product management, the answer is really, it depends. Like there's no clear cuts. If you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you get here. If you do 2, 3, 6, you get here. Like it's really not that clear cut, but there's a lot of trust and a lot of investment in people's learning and development. In fact, one of our core values is to pursue growth and learning. So we're very big on people self-motivating and taking on learning opportunities to help themselves get better in their role. And at best, we provide guidance to say, okay, if your career aspiration is to become, I don't know, I guess a product lead, then here are some strengths you need to develop vis-a-vis where you are now. And then we just help you get there quicker or according to your own timeline. So on that front, it's really vague, to be fair, just like product management and the rest of our lives. But there is a framework that exists to help you think through your growth trajectory as an individual and as a product person in Paystack as well.
Okay,
yeah.
Nice. Okay, all right. So I always battle with, and I don't know if you get the same sense. I just feel like we struggle with getting product managers. There is a shortage of product managers, and I speak for South Africa, but I get the sense it might apply to Africa, but maybe you can validate that for me. So how do we address that problem? And for me, the associate product manager, when I saw that in Paystack, I was like, yay, but now you're telling me it's more internal. So I'm hoping you've got some nuggets to share.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't even know myself. It's also one of the things that keep me up at night. Just generally the talent dearth across the continent, not necessarily in products, but across the board. But I do think that companies need to think about their pipeline very seriously. Of course, as expected, people want to hire individuals that can hit the ground running and just take on the work. And I think that's especially relevant if you're an early stage company. Like you don't even have bandwidth to learn anything for yourself. You need help. So obviously you're going to optimize for people that can provide the help that you need. But I think as you get more established, or as you begin to think a bit more deeply about sustainability and continuity, then you have to figure out how to generate a pipeline for yourself. It's a very interesting scenario we're seeing play out in Nigeria because there are a lot more institutions that are trying to help people become PMs. And the way they do that is to take you through a learning process, and then you come out on the other side with a certificate or something that says, I've been through this program, and so I understand product management. And then each company now has to decide if that's enough, or if they have a framework to bring people like that in and then take them through a program on how they can become effective enough to actually function as a PM. I will acknowledge that it takes time and effort and bandwidth and money. But I think every company has to think about, we can't run away from it for much longer. Just think about your pipeline and how to get people in. Create the time and the space and the room for people to learn when they get into your company. Yes, some people will be able to hit the ground running from day one, but some people won't. And if you want, by the time that first person, transitions out, you don't want to be stuck, right? You want to make sure that there's someone else that can take over. So just creating that room and space. And I think the hardest part is just really allocating resources that can oversee whatever that program is, because somebody has to manage it. Somebody has to create a curriculum. Somebody has to teach. Somebody has to take people through new projects and help them understand how to be the best version of themselves as PMs in the company. And the question most founders ask me is like, yeah, but I want that person to be building, like, like I don't have time. Like this person needs to deliver this thing. I don't want them to be distracted by grooming this new crop of people, so it's almost like a chicken and egg situation, but I do think we can't run away from it for much longer. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm just going to take another question from the audience. It's Jimmy again. Is there an emphasis on face-to-face customer engagements or interviews, or quite a variety?
Oh, if this was before what year are we in now? 2020. If this was before 2020, I would have said yes, optimize for face-to-face engagements as much as possible. But of course, with COVID, yeah, that's not happening. So we found a good mix of just like letting people feel warm enough to open up virtually, right? Before COVID, everybody thought the only way to build the right kind of relationship was to be face-to-face with the person. But we've all seen and learned that there has to be another way. So right now, like we don't insist on why a largely distributed team anyway. So it's not exactly feasible. But it does help when you're able to meet people in person. Don't get me wrong, like grab a coffee, grab a meal, go to the office, have a meeting. That's super helpful, but we don't optimize for that any longer. As long as you're able to get access to the person, build the right rapport, establish the right kind of relationship, and get the kind of feedback you're looking for, then it's all well and good.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got another question from Wusi, and Wusi is asking, what are your go-to resources for expanding your product knowledge?
Yeah, I'm kind of like the worst at this question. I feel like I've just been so ad hoc. I keep saying I will curate a proper reading list, but I'm so sorry, I haven't done that yet. But what worked for me, especially in my early days, I literally looked up all the senior PMs and VPs of products and chief product officers and all the companies I admired. And then I started following them on LinkedIn and Twitter. It felt like being in a masterclass every day because they would just share like just random nuggets, right? But like to me, it was so profound. I'm like, oh my God, this is like a cheat sheet. And I still follow a lot of them. I just haven't taken the time to like write them down and link to their handles and all of that. So I will encourage everybody to do that. There's some books that have also resonated with me. I like the Lean Product Playbook by Dan Olson. I like Escaping the Build Trap by Melissa Perry. I love Crossing the Chasm by Geoffrey Moore. It's more a marketing book, but I think every PM should read it and just understand what kind of strategies to employ based on the life cycle of your product. Like, yeah, it's like a cheat sheet, to be honest. And then I really like the High Growth Handbook. It's sort of like a collection of stories from different company leaders, but there's a chapter on product management that I think was very insightful. Yeah, those are the ones I will say. And of course, like, again, when I started out, like the Mind the Product platform really helped me. I used to attend all the conferences. I used to read like every blog post they would put up on their website. And then I was in their Slack group as well. It's so cool because you can literally ask a question and you have like the chief product officer at this Fortune 500 company responding. And I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing. So yeah, please feel free to leverage that. And also communities, like any viable community that's just open and has people that are willing to share. You know what they say, what do you call a group of product managers? Who knows the answer to this question? Anyone? No, it's called a therapy session. So anytime PMs come together, it's always like, oh my God, how do we deal with all of this? And for me, it was just comforting to know that I wasn't crazy. Like, I'm not alone. These problems exist home and abroad. So yeah, let's just keep at it one step at a time. We'll just keep doing the best we can. Yeah, but yeah, those are the resources I have. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very true. Because just before Khadijah, you joined, I felt like we were starting a therapy session with Anita and me on the. It was like, yeah, we always have our challenges.
Exactly.
Now, I'm just going back. So Anita asked a question. How do you manage? So going back to the grooming of product managers and getting, product management skill and pipeline. How do you manage the grooming pipeline? Is it a dedicated PM that does the training, or do you rotate?
Oh, no, it's not a dedicated PM. We sort of pair, like for each person that comes in, we pair them with somebody. So it's a function of who's available and do they have the right skills to support this new person we want to bring in. So anytime there's space on that side, then we look towards bringing one more person in. And then we make sure that they're paired with somebody. Like we can't bring anyone in if they're not going to be paired with somebody. So the first part is just making sure that you have that person and that person has bandwidth. And then you can take on one more APM and just take them through the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then we've got Babalo, and she's asking, what are the KPIs or product metrics which you focus on as head of product expansion to measure success?
That's an interesting one. So I think there are two ways I would answer the question. I have a holistic view across all countries, right? It's like a dashboard or whatever that just has like key numbers, like the number of signups, number of active merchants, payment volume, right? But I found that that isn't as helpful as being able to distill it per market, just because some markets are moving faster than others. Some have like, you know, very small numbers that can skew the, like if you do 10 transactions and all of them are successful versus you do 10,000 transactions and then 90 of them are successful. I don't want to see 100% success rates for 10 transactions, right? I want to be able to drill down and just see how well each country is performing. So I have country specific dashboards that just provide high level summaries of the key metrics I mentioned. And then for each new product that goes live, I also have a dedicated dashboard where I can track performance. And then I'm like that annoying person that's like, oh, wow, I saw this decline. And they're like, yes, we saw it too. We're looking into it. We'll get back to you. I'm like, okay, fine. But one of my pastimes is actually looking at numbers. Like when I get up in the morning, one of the first things I do is to check out my dashboards and just see like the hockey stick is what I like to see. If there's a deviation, then it's like, oh my God, what could account for this? Of course, sometimes it's a fluke, but it's better to catch these things early before they become a problem, especially if it becomes a problem for your merchant. Like it's a very bad thing to me when an external customer is the one letting you know that you have a problem, you know? So just having enough insights to be able to proactively detect any issues and exceptions is very helpful. So yeah, just number of merchants existing, number of merchants that are signing up, number of merchants that are active, number of new active merchants, overall payment volumes, overall success rates by channel, success rates for the top 20 merchants, and just different things like that. Yeah, I could go on and on, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. All right. I'm just gonna ask one more question that I had in my list, and then yeah, if anyone's got questions, please pop them in the chat. So Google's got an engineering-driven culture. Apple's got a design-driven culture. Facebook is data-driven. And if you look at it in this context, how would you define Paystack's culture?
Yeah, I never know how to answer this question, to be honest. If I had to choose, I think I would just say we have a very strong product and engineering culture. And what that means is the product team has enough autonomy to determine what problems to solve or what opportunities to explore. But we lean very heavily on the engineering team to determine how we solve those problems or pursue those opportunities. So it's very hard for me to choose because of how cross-functional everything is. But it's definitely not sales. Like we're not just building because one large customer says they want this thing. It's like, does it align with the mission? How does it play in context of everything else? Do we have the bandwidth and the resources and the ability and the capacity to do it? And then how do we do it? Are we taking the highest quality decisions along the entire product discovery process and development planning cycle? And then we just build it. And then the fun part comes where you've built something. Is it meeting the desired objective? Are you seeing the kind of numbers you thought you would see? Do you need to go back to the drawing board and things like that? So yeah, I will say like product and engineering, it's really hard to choose.
Okay, all right. Okay, we've got a question from Hanko. And the question is, do you ever have PMs collaborate on the same product? And if so, how do you match them and how do you divide workload and tasks?
Yeah, we've done that before, but I don't think they were jointly accountable, if that makes sense. Like there's always an owner, right? And somebody that's responsible and somebody that's being held accountable. And then they can get support. So I can pair with you on an initiative, but it's very clear that you are the owner. And even if I have like a component or a part of the project I'm dealing with, if anyone is curious about it, or if anybody needs updates, it's you they are coming to. So yes, we've had people pair together, but there's always like an ultimate owner that is held accountable.
Okay, all right. And then I've got another question from Jimmy. Do you distinguish between the individual contributors and people management tracks in the product area for progression at Paystack?
Yes, so not even just like in the product team, but across the company. We realized early on that some people just didn't want to be people managers, and it didn't make sense to limit their ability to grow because of that, right? So there's a track for people that want to just be amazing PMs, own like stacks and stacks of portfolios and just do amazing work, but didn't want to deal with like people issues. People are so hard, you know, so you can't deny them that luxury. And there are people that just really love to support and mentor and build other PMs. So we did make a distinction, and now you don't have to like manage other PMs to progress beyond a certain point, the same way some other people do.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's true. I think, yeah, like you said, people management is so difficult, and if you don't like it, then it's, yeah, you need to give it a choice.
exactly.
Right. Okay, we've got 9 minutes. I know Wusi in the beginning was keen to ask you some questions. I want to see if Wusi's got some questions for you now. I'm gonna just open up the floor a bit.
Oh no, she answered it in her intro. I wanted to find out how it's like working at Paystack, but I think it's basically been answered throughout this chat.
Okay.
I guess the question is like how important is retention at like Paystack as a metric, and like what does good retention look like for you?
This is for people, right?
No, customers.
Oh,
Like, yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, sure. So, like retention is extremely important, obviously, because I mean, that's how we grow. That's how we do, like, that's how we measure success. How many people are you able to support, and how many of them stay with you versus they try it out and then they go. So retention is super important. And if you remember when we're talking about KPIs, I talked about active merchants and then new active merchants. So regardless of how many people sign up to use your service, we're constantly keeping an eye on how many of them are active. So you do at least a transaction within the defined window. And then we're also looking for like how many new active merchants have come into play in the past, you know, day or week, whatever. So we should be having people that are coming back versus people that just use us one-off and then for whatever reason they don't come back. So yeah, we keep a very keen eye on that. Sure. I will say though, I think there's a concept of a bad customer that we're exploring a while ago. So it was like, we're just asking ourselves, like, is there any kind of customer that we didn't want, if that made sense? Like, yes, we want everybody to explore digital transactions on the continent, but is there a world where there's a kind of business that we don't want? So apart from like illegitimate businesses, you know, or people that are violating mandates and regulations and OFAC sanctions and things like that, we didn't get very far there. So as long as you are legitimate in your jurisdiction and you meet the desired criteria in terms of, are you, how do I frame it now? Like if the government of the day requires you to be incorporated, to have a VAT number, etc., etc., if you meet that criteria, then we'd love to work with you. But if you're illegal, and these days there's so much work that goes into identifying bad businesses in terms of the scams or the Ponzi schemes and things like that. So like our fraud risk team and onboarding team is always working overtime to spot those. But if you're not in that category, then we'd love to work with you and would love to have you keep coming back forever and ever till the end of time. Cool.
All right. So while we're waiting for the questions, we've got 5 more minutes. What keeps you up at night, Khadijah?
What keeps me up at night? Like work-wise, obviously, not like where am I going to get like millions of dollars from? So
Yeah, work-wise.
work-wise, I think it's probably a combination of two things. It's probably regulation, because regulatory entities can, like, they have a lot of power, so they can wield a mandate that sort of turns your business to zero overnight. So just making sure to stay on top of that, build the right relationships, get insights, and comply with the directives of the day is a way we tackle it. But if anything keeps me up, it would be that. The other one is, I don't know how to frame it. It's like, what's the word? Maybe some sort of security type leakage or exploitation, you know? And I think the weakest link is just really people, you know, they're like, your company has policies to say, do this and that, and use this password protection scheme and like lock your system. But people will be people. So just any human error that can result in compromising our systems, I think. But yeah, other than those two, which so far haven't happened, I think I get very good sleep.
Okay, so we've got two more questions before we close off. Maggie's asking, how do you define the success metrics of a new product feature or of new product features?
How do I do that? I'm not sure I can answer the how, but it's just always thinking through for each initiative, like what does success look like and what does failure look like? Like, how do you know? And I ask PMs this, like, how do you know you've done a good job? And then they answer, oh, I will know I've done a good job if I see like 100 merchants adopt this product in the next month, if I see the success rates at above 90%, if I like, so it's a conversation. Over time, of course, it becomes a muscle that you've built and you can answer off the top of your head. But the way I nudge people to think through it is just, how do you know you've done a good job? And then on the flip side, what will make you feel like this project is a failure? And then you're like, oh, if nobody uses it, or if like blah, 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 blah. And then those just become the metrics that we keep an eye on after going live.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
I've got a, sorry, go for it.
you can speak. I couldn't see who it was, but please go ahead.
So yeah, it was me. I had a question. So you've touched on something that sounds like you've got a mentorship program also for PMs at Paystack. Can you tell me a bit more about the framework that you set up to handle that? Who's in charge of that? Kind of just talk me through, what does that look like?
Oh, I think you're referring to the associate PM role. It's not as much a mentorship program as it is a transitional role within Paystack for people that want to become PMs. So if you want to join the product organization from a different role, then you join the product organization as an associate PM. And the core KPIs or deliverables while you're an APM are to listen and learn, to demonstrate expertise, and then to ultimately demonstrate mastery. And then you become quote unquote promoted into an actual PM role, and then you can own a product suite or a product, if you will. Yeah. So it's not like an ad hoc mentorship program. It's literally a role that was created intentionally to help people transition from other parts of the company into the product team.
Awesome, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then I think I'll ask you the final question. Jimmy, do you want to ask yourself? You've asked a lot of questions, so I think it's nice to see your face if you want to.
Sorry. I'm sorry, I'm in the dark right now. I just forgot to switch on my lights, so I'm not going to switch on my video, but apologies. Yeah, I think one of the questions I always ask, product people is, what was your most memorable project or product ship? It doesn't have to be successful, but what was it, and why did you, what did it make you feel like it was your most memorable product or project?
Yeah. I think, okay, so the one that immediately comes to mind is this USSD payment method that we launched. This was years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago. So USSD is where you dial star XYZ and then money leaves your account, and then we record it on Paystack, and then the merchant gets credited. And I remember we're integrating to this particular bank, and I was working with an engineer then. And we just deployed, and we're like, oh, wow, amazing. Everything looks good. We'll go to bed, and then we'll come back tomorrow and see if there's any traction and make sure everything is going according to plan. And I remember just before shutting down, so I had set up my queries to like keep track on the dashboard. And I just refreshed and I saw like some numbers and I was like, oh my God, there's something wrong where we've deployed something from the test environment. Like I was so convinced something was wrong. And I called him back and I was like, you need to take a look, like something is absolutely wrong. Like where are these numbers coming from? And he checked and he was like, oh, these are real transactions. And I'm like, why would there be real transactions? Literally 5 minutes after pushing something to production. Like, aren't people wary? Like, you just saw a new payment method and you just used it and it just worked and people kept, I was just like, wow, this is crazy. So yeah, it turns out it wasn't a mistake. It just happened to be something people were super excited by and I was panicking for nothing. So that for me was like a very interesting moment out of all the features I've built.
Awesome. Thanks, Khadijah.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Just checking just some comments here. Yeah, there's just Keenan who's saying he's really enjoyed the talk. Very insightful and comprehensive. So thanks for sharing your experiences with us, Khadijah. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
I think it's 7 o'clock. I know you're a super busy person and I am very grateful for you spending your hour with us. And thanks for sharing your product experience with us. And all the best with those expansions. We'll be watching where all you'll be going in Africa. And I'm sure you're going to make, it's going to be a success. So thanks so much for joining us. So it's 7 o'clock. If any of you want to hang around for conversations, please feel free to hang around. We'll be, the organizers will be here. So yeah, otherwise, we hope you enjoyed the talk and we hope you'll join us for our next event as well. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
Have a great
Bye.
evening.
Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Sure, it was quite interesting.
There's that awkward moment waiting to see if anyone's sticking around.
It's the first time I'm doing this, Wusi, the sticking around part. I see
Pranav and Kellen get to listen to the after talk Skinner. Did you guys have questions or wanted to chat or just still have your Zoom on?
I'm just going to stop the recording.